Clean up your mess. Don't talk loudly on the train. And brush your teeth before and after breakfast.
いや、誰がそんな時間
じゃあ、食べかすを落とさなくていいよね。
めんどくさい。
Common sense. Humans have these universal rules that they usually follow, but people in different countries have a slightly different idea of common sense. Today, I'll talk about things like why sneezing is a sign of the devil and how Japanese parties can really confuse foreigners. Are you ready? Let's begin. So, I realized a lot of things when I went to work in Japan, and one big cultural difference was...
Bless you.
Oh, thank you. One big difference was saying bless you. Here in the UK, anytime someone sneezes, it's normal to just say bless you to that person, even if it's a complete stranger. Saying bless you is just a type of basic manners, and it's something that everybody does, unconsciously. Even in Japan, there was a guy sitting next to me who sneezed, and I automatically, without thinking, just said, "Oh, bless you." And that person looked at me and was like, "Huh?" And I was like, "Oh, of course, I'm in Japan. Duh." But anyway, do you know why we say bless you? Well, there's a really interesting story behind this phrase. So, in a nutshell, a long time ago, before we knew so much about medicine and disease, people used to believe that sneezing was a sign that a ghost or the devil or something bad was kind of controlling your body. And by saying bless you, it was a way of removing the bad spirits. Of course, I don't know, that's what they say. And there are so many other phrases that are related to religion that we use even if we're not religious. For example, fingers crossed or touch wood. You might have heard of them. But yeah, if you're in an English-speaking country and your friend or somebody you know sneezes, try saying bless you. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. Now, the next thing that many British people think is common sense and normal is holding the door open for others. Now, I don't know about the younger generation. Well, I feel so old. But many people open the door for others when they see someone, close by. Although it is common sense, everyone knows that you should do it, I actually only see about 20 to 30% of people actually doing it. I've heard some people say that, people in the UK, they hold doors open for people because, they're so polite and gentlemanly. But actually, I think there's a bit of a different reason. After going to Japan and working for about a year and a half, I noticed that most of the doors were actually automatic. If you think about it, supermarkets, the post office, the bank, pretty much any facility or any place where you do business, the doors are pretty much always automatic. I mean, maybe that's just in Tokyo and other large cities, but there are a lot of places with automatic doors. However, in the UK, I don't think there are that many automatic doors. Of course, we have some, but definitely not as much as Japan. The reason why more people in the UK open doors is not because, we're more polite. I think Japanese people and British people, I think they're both, equal levels of polite. Although I think we show politeness in different ways. But it's just that there are more manual doors that you have to hold open. However, if Japan did have many of these heavy manual doors, especially with a higher population of elderly people, I think you would probably see a lot more people holding doors open for others. Now, common sense is often connected to tradition, and one of these traditions that I had to get used to in Japan was the Bōnenkai, or the end-of-year party. When I was in ALT, I went out with some work colleagues to have dinner, and when we sat down, I had a small problem. I looked at the table and there were a few seats that were open, and I randomly chose a seat and sat down next to somebody. And one of my colleagues said, yeah, Eric, こっちに座ってください. And she also checked my age, asking, Eric は26歳ですよね? Or something like that. And I was like, is there a connection between sitting down and my age? And then later I found out that you have this kind of special seating arrangement. You have the kamiza, I think, which is the kind of the eldest, the highest position. And you have the seiza? Wait, seiza is a sitting position, isn't it? What's the name? What's the opposite of kamiza? I've completely forgotten. But anyway, because I was the youngest, I had to sit in the youngest position close to the door. And I've heard that it's from the old times when the seat closest to the door is like the most dangerous because somebody might attack. So, of course, you want the most important person in the safest place, away from the entrance. But yeah, seiza, kamiza, and this kind of seating arrangement based on the hierarchy, it's just common sense, right, for Japanese people. And on top of the seating arrangement, there was one more thing. That is, filling up beer. So I went to another party for another school that I was working at, and this time the seating was random. When you entered the restaurant, you pulled this lottery ticket that had a number on it, and everybody sits in the position for their number. And I remember being super nervous, I was sweating so much, because I got the seat in between the principal and the vice principal of the school. So in other words, the two highest ranking people in the school, I was sitting in between them. And at that time, I was still not so confident in my Japanese. I mean, I'm still not completely confident now. Don't get me wrong, they were super nice, they were really kind and welcoming. But anyway, I'm going off topic. So I was speaking to somebody else, another colleague, and I noticed that when we were speaking, they were looking, or they were glancing at the vice principal and the principal's beer. So I was thinking, is this person okay? What is he looking at? Does he want beer? Does he want to drink his beer? Why does he want to drink his beer? I was really confused. So I asked my Japanese friend after the party, and I heard that it's very common for the juniors or the kohai, to pour beer or ask for a refill when the person's beer runs out. And actually, this is very similar to Chinese culture. You probably don't know, but I'm half Chinese and half Malaysian, but I was brought up in the UK. So in Chinese culture, it's very common to pour tea, that is Chinese tea, for your elders first. And when they run out, you also, refill their cup with tea. So it's quite similar to this situation. But I didn't realize that in Japan, you also do this with beer. Now, let's change the situation. I want you to imagine you're in a Japanese convenience store. Now, when you go to the cash register to pay for your items, where do you put the money? Now, in Japan, you put it in this kind of small plastic tray, right? Or if it's a very high-tech, fancy konbini, then you might put it in this kind of machine. But did you know, in the UK, we don't have this kind of system. We just put the money in the cashier's hand. And I think it's the same in America, so that's why foreigners who come to Japan, who are going to the konbini for the first time and handing over their money, they get really confused because the cashier will place the tray next to them and they think, huh? What is this tray for? What do I do? And then they try to give the money directly into the cashier's hand, and the cashier's thinking, huh? Nande? Doshiteru? And it's just a lot of confusion. And this is a perfect example of where common sense in two different countries is different, and that causes a misunderstanding and lots of confusion. Now, one final thing that is common sense in Japan, but maybe not so much for other countries, is queuing up on the platform at the train station. I'm sure you've seen this before, long lines, long queues of people just waiting for the train and to go home. Now, waiting on the platform at a train station is not special to Japan, but there is one thing on the platform that is unique. And that is the marking on the platforms, especially in larger train stations. I can't remember off the top of my head, I'll search it later, but there are different lanes or different lines for the types of trains. And depending on which train you want to get, you line up in a slightly, different lane. Now, if you have ever been abroad, especially to London and maybe taken the tube, you might notice there are no markings on the floor. I mean, there's a yellow line to show please do not, step past this line for your safety, but apart from that, it doesn't show you where the train cars stop and where the doors open. And I was even more mind blown when I saw that on the Japanese version of Google Maps, you can see which car will be closest to the stairs or the elevator. Because in the UK, we don't have that information. For foreigners, lining up in certain places on the platform is just not common sense because we don't have that. Well, at least in the UK. Going abroad and finding out what is common sense in our country but maybe not others is really interesting, and I guess we take a lot of things for granted, so that's why traveling and, expanding your kind of worldview is such a great thing. So, I hope you learned a few things about what is unique about the UK and Japan, especially from a foreigner's perspective. But for now, thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Bye for now!